right, so welcome back to the Ambitious Stars podcast. Today's episode, we'll be sitting down with Walter P. Thomas. He is the founder and CEO of Agency 22. Agency 22 is a management agency. So they manage people like Jonathan McReynolds, Bri Babineaux, and R.O.E. And he's also just started a label with Jonathan McReynolds called Life Room Label, who has an artist by the name of Doe, who's a dope artist. We sit down and we talk about all of these things, as well as how they find different creatives to work with their team, what they expect, just his background and management in general. So without further ado, just a disclaimer, there is a bit of bad audio towards the end, a little static. So be aware if you're listening on the radio or loudspeakers that you might experience static around like the 32-minute mark of this episode. But without further ado, let's get this episode started. All right, so welcome back to the Ambitious Stars podcast. I am here with Walter Thomas, who is the founder of Agency 22, who reps artists like Jonathan McReynolds, Bri Babineaux, and R.O.E. I met Walter like 2 years ago. Been working with him ever since, and yeah, I wanted to have him on to really bring a new perspective and not get into the photography and video side, but the business side of things, people that I work with as well. So we're going to get this podcast started, and I'm going to let Walter tell you guys how he kind of got into managing different artists.
So I started like fall of 2009, I want to say. There was a group called Mind of a Matter, inspirational group in church. About five of those guys in there, and they asked me to manage them. So I didn't really know what I was doing. I knew I loved music, but I didn't know if I loved managing, And so I did that for about a year and a half. And then they added a guy named Jonathan McReynolds to the group. A young lady named Tyler introduced me to him. She said, hey, you guys need to add him to the group. They added him to the group, and he was like amazing then, I ended up stopped working with the guy just because we was kind of outgrew each other, and we was the same age. It was hard for them to respect me, so it was just time to transition out. And then I started interning at a record label called Ty Scott Records, and then I did some internships at Verity Records as well. I did that for 2 years, and then Jonathan was going solo. So he had left the group. He was like, yo, I'm about to, go ahead and do this thing solo. He kind of happened really fast because he gave the CD. One of his friends gave the CD to a pastor. Got really big on the radio. Kind of caught fire kind of quick. So Jonathan was like, hey, what am I supposed to do? Now, he only knew me for management from the group, so it was kind of made most sense. But, with that, I came on board. I helped start managing him. I was his role manager actually first. And then I hired another young lady named Talisa to come on and help us because I didn't know what I was doing, So my thing was like, man, let me go get one of these OGs, one of these vets to help us so we can make sure we can keep up with the momentum. So we did that. And, I've been a part of it since, and then I started adding other talents like R.O.E. 2 years after Jonathan. I worked with him for a very long time, and he's a great indie artist, a great conscious rapper, and just developing that part was even difficult. But man, we've been working with each other for at least 7-8 years, so I'm really excited about him. And Bri, I just started managing her like a year ago, and so she's been new, fresh, young, worship, which is very red hot right now. People love worship music, and so she's been kind of known to be an internet sensation, but she's massive in her own way, and so we're continuing to build her up now.
Got you. So for the people who don't know, what is the definition of a manager per se?
There's different levels of managers. So there's like a general manager, there's a business manager, there's an artist manager, there's a manager, there's a role manager, there's a personal assistant, So the levels, it just depends. But I guess the one for this topic would be artist managers. You represent artists, and one of your main jobs is to be able to manage situations, right? And broker deals, and being able to negotiate certain things on their behalf, and understand the business, and have a foresight of what's next, And then it's just it's the music, it's the album, it's relational. But the most important part of it is being relational, being able to understand that you got to have relationships to get certain things done. But primarily it's managing the artist's career in a sense and giving them direction on what's next.
All right, so you manage 3 different artists now. So if another artist comes to you, is it a good match for you, or is it more of I guess the opposite way around, where the actual artist is a good fit for, I guess, your agency?
I think it's a little of both. I think it's what makes the most sense because managing is really a marriage. So if I say yes to an artist, that means I'm saying I'm allowing you to come into my personal time and you allow me to go in your personal time, and we're building together. Because it is really a race, that you have to run together. And so it really is about match. It really is about how much have they done on their own. That makes the most sense. And then just really define what they really want. Because sometimes they say, I want a manager, but they don't have a lot to manage. So then you're running into that. And then you really find out the more you talk to them, they need a personal assistant because they need somebody to help them with their schedule,
All right. So how does a person, leading into that, how does a person know outside of, okay, so how does a person know if they're ready for a manager or not? And I guess for me, if I was looking at it from an artist standpoint, it would be to a point where I was overwhelmed or I had so much going on that I could use somebody to manage the situation and doing things like that. Because I know some photographers have managers, and I guess that would be to take the load off. So how would a person know to start reaching out to somebody like yourself?
When you become in demand and you can't manage the demand anymore. I mean, when you become in demand and when you can't manage the demand anymore, which means like, you're so booked up that the admin side of it is not as affecting what you do on the professional side as far as like video, photography, and scheduling, that whole type of thing. So I just think it depends on the demand. And every artist hit a ceiling when they know they need help. They know it. They feel it. They've done all they can do by themselves. Now they need help. They've done socials. They've done this. They've done that for 4 years. They created their own content. They did their own music. They produced their own record. And they got a strong body of work. Now they need somebody to help them get into the room in a sense.
Okay, so getting into, I guess, today's topic, which is how to navigate your brand. When you are, I guess, initially looking at an artist, and what parts of their brands are you looking for? And I know you manage 2 different genres, so I'm pretty sure it's different for both. I know gospel is kind of more on the perfect sense almost, and then R&B is kind of free for all, So what are you looking for in brands, and what should every artist be looking for within their brand to make sure that people kind of get the authentic side of them?
I guess I start with R&B and hip hop. I think it's more with that side of the fence. It's about a look. It's about a sound and what sells. And there's so many different levels to rap right now, and there's so many different levels to R&B. You have your R&B charts, and then you have your urban AC charts as well. So those 2 different sounds, and so that's a different market. And then conscious rap and rap is 2 different worlds too. So I mean, those are different looks and different sounds, but I think it's about what type of artist that you want, And so particularly in my sense, I like conscious music, so I'm a big fan of it. I think there's a niche for it, and there's a group of people that's loyal to that fan base and want more stuff like that. It's not mainstream, and that kind of, So it's like, okay, Walter, it's not mainstream, but it's like it's good music. There's a loyal fan base that's consistently buying it, that's streaming it. We got to make sure that you just give enough content for them to keep up with the demand of that, right? And then R&B and hip hop is a little different. Like, it's all about sex, it's about look, it's about the sound, it's about who you're doing a collab with. It's such a big science. So that one's a little bit different. If I'm looking for an artist in that particular brand, I am looking for more of a somebody have a current sound of R&B, you know, and not like the 80s and 90s, because it doesn't necessarily work right now like we want it to, in my opinion. And then gospel, I mean, that just varies, bro. It's like, oh man, that's like a massive thing too, because like there's inspirational, like Jonathan, that is the ultimate storyteller, conversational pieces. And then there's traditional sounding, then there's worship sounding, then there's quartet. And so even with those, there's levels to that. It's like it just depends on what the appetite is. I think the branding is important. The brand is very important, Brian, because that gets people to understand who you are in a sense and what you want people to convey and see on a daily basis. So the brand is important, but I don't kind of close myself to a genre in a sense. I'll pick up anybody that makes the most sense, but I also look for somebody that's already able to, well, not are able, but somebody that's able to that's willing to do the work, you know. And so you look at that when you're trying to sign with a partner. You look at how much work have they done by themselves and what can I add to them, you know. If that answered the question, do they? Yeah.
So with artists like John, I know probably when he was coming out, he was kind of outright, because he doesn't necessarily flow into gospel. He calls it life music. And like you said, it's inspirational, so it could really fall into anywhere, but his source is, Christian, I guess. So with somebody like that, how do you per se know that you can handle that business or the brand side of artists like John?
John's a little different because when he came out, a lot of people didn't understand it. So we had to make people understand it, which is even harder when you're trying to break a tradition of what people conceive of what gospel music is. And what he was doing was storytelling, just like country music does. They do storytelling times 10. He was doing it in a way that it was so conventional that pastors was saying what he was saying, but he said it in a smarter way. And people are like, oh, this is different. And then some people are like, no, this ain't gospel. So for years, we had to fight through some of that curve stuff because they didn't think it was traditional. And now there's starting to be another level of different type of gospel music, like there's different type of rap music now. It is inspirational, it's traditional, it's choirs, it's, so much other stuff. And so I guess to answer your question about how do you manage a brand like that?
Yeah, how do you navigate something like that?
Yeah, I think it is, you're learning every day. You're learning every day because it's like, because there's no specific road to him or to that sound of music, I want to say, you're creating it yourself and you're making ways for yourself and you're making room for the next guy, but it is hard for this guy, that's in the seat that's driving and up the road and making his own way.
All right, so with managing 3 different artists, I know that's probably more complicated than the regular person can see. What is your day-to-day like with managing an artist?
That's a loaded question. All right, day-to-day, it is check-ins with the artists, pretty much. Check in with their teams, like their assistants or PAs or role managers, project managers. I will talk to the labels. Might have a radio call, might have a sales call, might have a marketing call. And then there's like follow-up, like, hey, this guy wants to book you. This person wants to talk to you. This brand wants to do this with you. And just kind of going through the day and navigating like, okay, what's important? Like, I need to respond to this. I need to do this. We need to do this. I need to call Jonathan about this. I need to call Bri about this. We should do this. So it varies, man. But I'm on the phone from 8 a.m. until 10 at night.
Organizational skills when it comes to having 3 different artists. What is that like? Because, and I think you have a team around you, so they probably make it a little easier. But what is that like for you organizing your day and making sure that you get it done? Because I know now with COVID and everything is digital. So if you need to record this and it got to be done by Friday, but maybe the artist is only available one day out of that whole week, how do you make sure you're organizing? How do you make sure you are, holding up your end of whatever deal you have with those people?
It is really important to be able to plan, and when things you have a certain plan in place and stuff changes, being able to pivot really quickly because stuff changes every day, you know. But you gotta understand the basics of the science of planning, you know, to make sure all those things come together. And like I think one of the cool analogies I always heard about a manager is the manager is the quarterback. You know, like he's throwing it to the wide receiver. You know, he's throwing it to the other players and building the plays for everybody to get everybody to the touchdown. You know, and so one thing is I try to utilize the team a little bit more to kind of help us stay all organized, from assistant, from project manager, and kind of build it out a little. But I think it's just about planning as much as you can, and if stuff change, learn how to pivot really quickly because it will change.
Got you. So with change with COVID, where do you think, I guess, the industry is headed? And I know, all of this could be gone in a couple months, or it could still be the same. So where do you think, and as a manager, how do you prepare your artists to, be successful in these times?
Yeah, I think it's hard to plan during these times because you don't know. As where you used to plan, you could plan out a whole year because you knew that you still had arenas or tours or facilities to go to promote the record. Where now we don't necessarily have that. So I think now I've been really encouraging all three talents to save money as much as they can, be more creative with content because content is important right now. So that's why you are very important to what we do because you need content to kind of keep it going, keep the story going, and just getting ready to still put out records. We have put out a record on Jonathan. We put out a record on Bri. We put out a record on R.O.E. during these times, and then really understanding how to put it out, what's the strategy, and building it out a real narrative of what we want people to feel and see when it comes to this record.
All right. So as a photographer, video person in this industry, how I guess as a beginner or coming up, you always want to know how to get in a room with these different artists. Before I got to Chicago, I knew of John's music. He's heavy in the church. I grew up in the church, so it was just like, how do you get to those people? And even now, I'm still like, how do people get in the room with like the likes of Beyonce or maybe even her or any of those people that are, I guess, A-list celebrities? How do you guys find people for video and for photo, for John, for R.O.E., for Bri?
Man, that's a loaded question. You keep hitting me, man. Dead in the chin. Bam. I think it's word of mouth. I think it's, there's two particular people on my team. One of their roles are to look online for new content managers or new people to create content or creators, and just look. And then a lot about getting into the room is about, I think a lot about sewing, like that might be a time where we're like, hey, Brian, we need you to come and do this, and you do this for the love. And the next time we take care of you and we make sure you're straight. If I can't take care of you, then I'll recommend you to the next manager that needs some content because that guy, artists need content too. So it's relational. I think it's about making sure you have all your stuff online where people can go see it and it looks good and it's amazing, but then you get the right talent. So you might have to do pro bono stuff with the right talent to get you the look that you need to get paid. Does that make sense?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, we talked about that in the last podcast episode with Jason. We were just saying that he was saying that you never know what somebody's doing because we were talking about envy. And we were saying that you never know if somebody was doing something for free or if they were getting paid for it or not. And so I think that's a big thing for, I guess, the photo and video world, which is, I guess, the main following of this podcast. Is a lot of people don't know how to get there. And when people ask me, I really don't know what to tell them other than to just be present and just hope that, that time comes. And I guess putting yourself in a position would just be being on social media and maybe somebody reaches out.
Yeah, 60% of our team that works with us now happened because of social media reaching out to us, me and Jonathan and Bri and R.O.E. and the rest of the guys. Like, they've reached out and I've read their messages and I'll be like, oh, let me go check out their work before I respond back. So direct messaging works. You know what I'm saying? Like, it definitely works. So social presence. But if I go click on a page and it's private and I can't see the work, then that's hard. So
Killer, bro. Telling you, I have people to reach out from like my YouTube channel, and you know, you wanna, cause for me, I'm a personal person, so I want to say your name when I reply and all that other stuff. But also, I want to see your work so I can, cause you're coming at me, you're just like, oh, I like your work. I want to, you know, show the love back, but I can't if it's private, and I can't even, you know, get into your life or know, cause people also reach out that, you know, be like, hey, I would love to take pictures of you, da da da. But if your page is private, it's
the killer. I mean, I don't think people really realize that. But like, when you like, yo, I need some work, or hey, checking me out. When you doing this next, I'm like, all right, cool. Let me go check out his work. And as page block, I'm like, oh, up to the next. Let me find somebody else, or let me call up Brian and see if he got somebody that can recommend me, or that type of thing. Again, I believe it's all relational and right timing.
yeah,
Yep.
big time.
Yep.
So for the artists that are maybe just starting out or have a small following but are prominent and they want to be seen and they want to be heard, from your perspective in the last maybe 2 or 3 years, what have you seen that has caught and that has sold?
I've seen. Okay, I gotta refer to gospel first because that's a whole different genre. But gospel, I've seen certain artists locally take over the city. Whenever there was an event, they was on it. Whenever there was a feature, there was a feature. Whenever there was anything locally that had a presence, they took over. And I see that type of stuff works because you got to have a footprint at home. To me, with more hip hop and rap, I seen consistent like covers work. I seen social media content work. I seen them being natural, just them smoking and kicking it, and relatable stuff that I seen that fans navigate to more than just curated stuff that you're forcing. So it works in different genres, but I'm seeing that the most common thing between the two would just be the realness. You know, like, people want to connect with real. They want to be relatable. They want to be able to say, I can connect to that person. I see myself as that person. I look at her and I'm like, yo, I want to be her. I want to be him. You know, they do that type of stuff in there. They might not say it out loud, but fans do that to me, and that's why they're so consumed with the artist on what everything they do. If they're dating, if they're not dating, if they're broken up, that type of thing, because they want to be that type of person.
Weird. All right, so I think it was Jay-Z who said, when signing an artist, he doesn't sign a song, he signs an artist. And I know with you and John, you guys are starting a new label. Piggybacking off of that statement, how do you see the potential in a potential artist that you sign?
How do we see potential in the artists that we sign? I think for Jonathan, one of the reasons why he started the label was to give artists that was like him, a unicorn in a sense, an opportunity to display their music. Now, right now, we have a young lady that's signed to us. Her name is Doe, and she is the conversational artist. Her music is conversational. It is a conversation. It is storytelling at its best. And Jonathan is a storyteller, so it made sense, you know. But you do look at an artist that can go further, you know, or you see as them as another person they can go into. Like, you know, we have a Jonathan in the world, but it might be another chick that needs something that's relatable, that needs that type of conversation piece that's relatable, and see her and be like, yo, I felt that. I just never heard nobody say it in song, you know, and they relate that way. So I agree with Jay's statement. I agree with Jonathan's thinking is you start a label to create a lane for these new guys that won't have an opportunity at a major, where you're able to kind of have a boutique style with them and kind of deal with them directly and develop them, coach them, talk them through, work on the music video together, work through the music together, work on the songwriting together, work on the marketing together, and build it out together. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And as far as navigating that particular, I guess a brand, I don't even know if it's particularly a brand for a label, but how do you make sure that you're able to sign the artists that you want to by the artists that you already have?
Give me an example.
So say you go and sign somebody who's doing R&B, heavy R&B, but then you maybe reach out to this artist, or an artist reaches out to you and they're maybe gospel, but they see you only have an R&B artist. How do you kind of show them that you can work with them and, you know, be the right fit for their brand?
From a label aspect or from a manager aspect too?
Label.
Label. Label's a little different because I believe certain labels are genre based. So they might have some level of influence where it's not necessarily like all traditional gospel, but it might be inspirational. I think in our case right now, prematurely talking, I think ours is more the unicorn artist, the different artist, right? That needs a platform, that needs somebody to help them on the trail as they do this race, how to deal with all that weird stuff as you become an artist during a time where everything sounds like this. I think.
And then from a manager standpoint, how do you make sure you're on brand with, you know, anybody that might come to you, in the sense of managing them when you
only focus on one side.
Yeah, exactly.
So like a perfect example, like we have two inspirational artists in a sense, and we got one rap artist. I think when I'm looking at other talent like that to sign, I am looking like what's working. Does this sound work right now? And is it profitable? And do they got fire? And do they have followers? And do they have a buzz about them that we can build on top of? It's hard to start a fire without wood and, you know, gasoline. You know, it's hard right now, especially in a time when everything's digital, when you cannot necessarily go touch a fan or do live concerts or interact with fans and stuff like that. So it got to be a little bit more, you know, than the normal, in a sense.
Got you. So what is the bare minimum for artists right now? It's starting out. I know a lot of people, I get hit up all the time. It's just like, I've been doing this for a while, but I never did a visual. And I really need a visual. This will, you know, I'm hoping this will set me apart. Da, 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 da. How important is the visual right now?
I can't stress it enough, man. I feel like the visual is more prominent than audio now. I mean, think about what Instagram was years ago. It was all about pictures. And now the thing that's getting more likes, I think that's moving videos. It's important. I believe you should lead with a video in a lot of your campaigns because people are visual. And they'll either fall in love with the song because they've seen it or they'll fall in love with it because of the audio. But the visual point is so important. Like I feel like artists, as they build out their campaigns for their records, like production and producers and mixing and mastering, like you need to be allocating some money towards video because you can't do it without a video now.
Got you. So I was talking to somebody the other day. I think I was in an Uber and we were just talking about just the industry in general. And I said, it's best to spend your money wisely because to spend $5,000, $10,000, $15,000 on a music video that doesn't make sense is a bad decision when you could potentially spend $400 or $500 on a more relatable video for your brand. So how do you feel about that? Because I know in the gospel world, music videos aren't huge. You know, I think John is one of the few people I've seen have done an actual visual album in the gospel world. So how do you make those decisions on what's a good move and what's not a good move?
On a visual standpoint, I think it's more of understanding your client and their base and what their fans want. We knew that this record was short. We knew that visually would carry us through during the time. Cause when we recorded that was at the top of March, man. So we was going into this pandemic. And we was like, we're going to put this record out. Like, this got to come out first. This have to come out first that Monday, and then the record comes out Friday. Because we knew that people would get into it visually first. One of the top places where people consume music is YouTube. So that means it's visual. With audio, you know, sometimes they got audio, but it's visual. So you know that you need that because that bass needs that because it's a shorter record. And we're like, okay, cool. We definitely need to do a visual record. It makes the most sense for what we're doing now, and the record is short, and it's cool, and nobody really done a lot of this in this space. R&B, hip hop, I think you definitely need all those type of things. I think it's about, like you said, being wise about what you spend that money on, because like, yo, you can get all these cars and all this other stuff, but the music ain't connecting. The fan ain't gonna really get it. But it depends on who you're trying to reach. So if this is a younger skew, the cars, the flashy stuff, the chicks might make the most sense, right? But then be wise about it. Like, why do I need to spend 20 grand on it when I can spend 5 and get 5? Because you're only getting 3-4 shots, probably that, of the same thing. Is recycle. So I think it's about being smart. But a lot of times we want to go big or go home, but a lot of times just being simple works too. So to your point, man, to your great point, you don't have to spend a lot of money to do a visual. You just need the right visual with the right amount of money.
So one thing I've heard a lot is when you get a manager, when you get an agent, your life or a label, your life gets so much easier. You don't have to sell yourself no more. Your manager's in place to do all of that for you. How do you feel about that statement? And what is the misconceptions of those things when it comes to a manager?
Man, one, understand what the manager does. The manager is there to navigate and help you build opportunities, right? There's different levels to it. Every manager ain't gonna go get no water. Every manager ain't gonna wipe your face when you're done. You know what I'm saying? Like, do you really want to hire a manager to do that? And the average manager that do this professionally is going to tell you, I don't do that. That's why you have a PA, a personal assistant. That's why you have a role manager. That's why you have this assistant to help you with those type of things. My job is to build your brand, help you build your brand to be bigger and partner with global people. And making sure that you got revenue and that somebody's focusing on the revenue, right? Yo, come on, I forgot.
I don't know. So basically just speaking on the job for them is now done and everything's kind of on your shoulders now.
So usually in a scenario when an artist do sign it with the manager or with the agency or with a label, they're like, oh, the work is done. They're going to do everything and everything else. That is the time you work even harder. Because now you got to prove to people that work with you that you're worth their attention. Because there's 7 million of you. So now you got to work even harder, which is okay. But now you're in an ecosystem that they can leverage you. And that's what you want. But you got to prove that you really want it. Now you're in the room. Now you got to really work while you're at the table. And it ain't going to come that easy. You know, like I got a particular client right now that's like, yo, listen, I feel like I'm still proving myself to this label. And I'm like, yo, listen. We got to continue to prove ourselves until we start selling millions and millions of records. But every day we're proving ourselves. Every day we're coming up to the table saying this is our ideas and being proactive. If I can't stress anything else, it's like when you get those teams, you got to be proactive. It don't stop. You make people work for their percentage, but you be proactive, and people will work harder when they see that you working even harder. And the team don't mind working with you when you're busting your to get there, you know. So I do believe that artists and photographers and anybody that, you know, get those type of signups, they do kind of get lazy in the sense of lackadaisical in the sense where they're not like, oh, okay, I'm gonna let them handle it. But no, you got to work even harder, man. I can't even stress that enough. Like, that's the time when you come to the table and work. I feel like we work harder now, even with partners that we work with, and we got a label. And we got an infrastructure, and we got an agent, and we had WME, and you know, we're working even harder with them. But it's like, yo, when they see how hard we work, they work hard for us, man. They make sure that they position all of our clients to win in the sense. So I think that's a great question. I think it's important to really understand the importance of being proactive.
And last question. So for the independent artist who is on that indie trail, like a Chance the Rapper or somebody, and they're not sure about having a label. Maybe they have the offer and they're just hesitant about it. What would you say to them? And, you know, is it worth it to sign to a label nowadays?
Is it worth to sign to a label? Tricky question. It depends on what an artist at in their career. Jonathan got a label. Bri has a label. R.O.E. don't. He likes being independent. He feel like he wants to control his narrative and where he goes. He wants the correct partner, but he's like, yo, I don't necessarily need a label right now. I'm good. You know, I could put out music how I want to. I could talk about what I want to. I could put it out on my own. I can go on DistroKid, and you know, he likes the flexibility of it. So it's loaded. Some artists need it because they need the financial backing. Some people need it because they hit the ceiling in their career and they're like, this is the next step. But again, the labels are only going after these guys that got fire. They got some fire behind them. That's like, oh, you starting to see numbers. You starting to see YouTube. You starting to see this stuff. And they want to build with you because now they have something to work with. You know, so it's loaded, Brian. I think as an indie, you have to really figure out what's more important to you. Being able to be creative in a sense where you want your message to be out, and you can do that because there's tons of tools to do that. There's DistroKid, there's TuneCore, there's EQ. There's so many distro sites that allow you to put out music. But is it more your ego that you want it for, or is it because you know your homies got a deal and you don't, or is it because you like, yo, I'm at that point. I feel like I need it, but it's based on analytics. It's based on the numbers in front of us. Why does it make sense to sign you? And then you get caught up in that game. So I can't say it's wrong to sign to a label right now. I would say that I think every artist, every situation is different. And you have to kind of a la carte in the sense to kind of say, does this make sense for me right now?
All right, so that is the end of this episode. I think we talked about a lot of good stuff. And if you guys have any questions for Walter, you can drop them. If you're on YouTube, you can drop them down in the comments, and I'll try to get them to him. Do you want to shout out your social media?
It's Walter. It's Walt PJ Thomas on Instagram, and then Walter Thomas on Facebook.
Yeah, it's on the screen. If you want to follow him and see what he's doing, also follow all three of his artists: Jonathan McReynolds, R.O.E, and Bri Babineaux. I'm so sorry, but I'll put all their Instagrams too. But I'll see you guys in the next episode of the Ambitious Stars podcast.